Welcome to Water Cooler Wednesday. Today is such a treat because, as you can see already, his personality comes out like through the screen and sort of grabs you. It's Rick Lozano, who is an incredibly talented speaker, trainer, consultant. Are you a coach? Do you coach people?
Are you coaching as well? Yeah.
You always throw that one in, right? Like, yeah, I also coach. No, he does. I just throw it in. Yeah, and coach. But Rick helps leaders, teams, and organizations unlock potential and amplify their talent. He is the author of Acoustic Leadership. There you go. Develop a leadership culture that resonates. And if you can't tell from the title, Rick is not just all of these other things that I spoke about, but he is also a musician, singer, songwriter. And so I definitely want to learn more about that and his path to leadership. He is the owner of Unlock and Amplify. He's built a reputation for his insight, energy, music, refreshing delivery that leaves audiences raving, and more importantly, with action items they can immediately implement to produce change. I would add, he's incredibly funny and fun. That's my dog. Engage, develop, inspire. That's what Rick does best, sometimes with a guitar in hand. Sorry, the kids are supposed to control the dog. Welcome to 2021. He's a bit of a singer too. My 120, well, actually he's closer to 140 pounds, but they think he's, the vet says he's going to die if he doesn't get to 120. So we're trying to feed him a little less. So we've got people in the chat. Hello, everybody. Thank you for being here. If you are viewing us from LinkedIn, say hello. If you are viewing us from Facebook, say hello. YouTube, that's the one I forgot to tell Rick beforehand.
YouTube.
We are on YouTube as well. Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter. And the restream goes on Instagram too. I think this goes directly to my mom's refrigerator. And we can make sure that everybody in your life who you're trying to impress gets a copy. What's my dog's name? Percy. He's named after Percy Jackson, the mythical character. When your son who has dyslexia tells you that he wants to name the kid after a literary character, it's like, yup, done.
Yep, I'm doing it.
Yeah, so anyway, thank you all for being here. So we got to get into this, man. I'm talking about my dog. But first,
yes,
we want to put Rick through the ringer before we allow him to say anything else. We want to put him through.
A suggestion, though. May I make a suggestion?
Yes.
First of all, David, thank you for being here. It's an absolute pleasure. But I think the audience, they expect something a little bit different today. So my recommendation is, for today only, we rename the show. So Water Cooler Wednesday is absolutely fantastic, but I think we're going to do things a little bit different today. So today, I'm going to recommend the show is called Whiskey Jar Wednesday. That's the way we're going to get down today. So Whiskey Jar Wednesday.
I'll drink to that, but I don't recommend it within the workplace necessarily.
There you go.
So that's, well, with that caveat, welcome to Whiskey Jar Wednesday. I love it. So somebody's already asking for the guitar. That will come, I promise. I had to beg him to be on here, and then I said, and by the way, you can only come if you bring the guitar. So without further ado, 6 in 60. And in the chat, answer along your best answers. We are going to ask 6 questions. We're going to put a timer up. We're going to ask 6 questions. Rick is a bit of a game player kind of guy anyway. We're going to put him up and see if he can get them all done in 1 minute. Ready?
Let's do this.
Here we go. Rick Lozano, 6 in 60. You're a talented musician, Rick. Who is the greatest musician of all time, besides for you?
Paul McCartney.
Oh, easy. One trait of your greatest boss of all time.
Supportive.
One trait of your worst boss of all time.
Can I bleep this live? Is that going to happen?
Don't give names or identify.
Disingenuous.
Okay, got it. Disingenuous. What is the greatest lesson you learned during the pandemic?
Got to be nimble. Got to be nimble. Got to move. Got to adapt quickly.
Awesome. I've been practicing my yoga. True or false? Anyone can be an effective leader.
That is a good question. That's such a nuanced answer. I'm going to say no for a couple of reasons.
Okay, I agree. We can circle back to this. You're a trainer and a rock star. Are rules meant to be followed or broken?
Broken.
Yes.
In the right box. Make it 60 seconds.
You did it. You got it. You locked it in. That was impressive. That was impressive. Yeah, and in the chat, put in there the greatest, I think of all those questions, the greatest trait of your boss, or a trait of the greatest boss you ever had. Because we're going to be speaking about leadership today. This is Rick's wheelhouse here. And we want to know, what do you think makes a great leader? All right. So first of all, let's get back to that idea. You said that it was a tricky question, and you also say that leadership is simple, or you simplify leadership. You don't say it's simple. So let's explore that. Why? What are the barriers to everyone being a great leader? Because we often hear that anyone can be a great leader.
When I thought about that question, the very first thing that came into my mind was people's motivations. If I think about the way the world works, we are all potential leaders. We are all influential. We impact other people. By the sheer nature of being here, we have the ability to influence somebody else's life. I think one of the things that is often forgotten when it comes to leadership, though, is that it's not about us. It's not about me. It's not about what I get and what I gain. And I think if we can make that shift, somebody can be a more influential, more effective leader. But without that, I don't think it's ever going to happen as much as it could. So the question is, can anyone be an effective leader? Well, yes, if they make a certain amount of changes. But it's going to require that initial perspective. It's not about us. It's about helping other people do their best work to a certain degree.
Right. I think that's incredibly well said. And I think also that we sometimes do a disservice because we tell people that anybody can be a great leader, and we encourage people. It's sort of like that Peter principle where we think that to rise up the ranks, by definition, you need to go from being a frontline sort of worker to being a manager or leader. And I think a lot of people, we set up for failure by only having that one career path.
Yep. I absolutely agree with that question. And, people say the difference between management, there's a difference between management and leadership. We hear it all the time. The challenge is organizations don't do enough with it. They say that, and yet they only reserve seats in their leadership development programs for people who are in managerial roles. And I think that's a huge disservice because we have people out there who are leading anyway. We have people leading whether we want them to or not. Don't we want them to be effective? Let's help them learn how to be an effective leader. Let's give them that perspective and then that skill set to go even further with it, because they're everywhere.
Right. Yes. And some people are more set to lead tasks and other people more set to lead people. And like you're saying, the job role and title can be very different.
Yeah.
I think you're dead on, but I do want to go back a second because we don't even know who you are. I read the intro that your mom probably wrote for you or something, and and so that's the typical thing you got to do. But I want to know your real Genesis story. I just took my kids that new Marvel movie, which was weird being in a movie theater again. It was like the 10 Rings or whatever, and I liked it because it's the first time you see this character. I always find it fascinating to learn where fascinating people come from. So I want to hear where Rick Lozano, the superhero, originated. What's your genesis? How do you get into music and then this leadership training and development? What does that path look like?
All right. So my official career is in leadership and talent development, and I've been doing it for about 20 years. And that particular part of my life started in the financial services industry. And so I was working for a bank. And I went from there to the world of technology, where I spent most of the next decade. And that alone was awesome because I went from a suit and tie every day to T-shirts and jeans every day. I was like, this is awesome. So that was one part of it. I began working as a keynote speaker about 8 years ago while I still had a full-time job, just because I think people found that there was some things that I had to offer or say that were impactful to their organizations. And so that became a big part of what I do these days. So to that question, I am a leadership consultant. I am a coach. I'm an author of a book called Acoustic Leadership, Develop a Leadership Culture that Resonates. What else do I do? Leadership development workshops. And yes, I'm also a musician. And here's kind of the backstory. Oh, actually, there's a song about this. I'll get to that in just a moment. You had to know there was going to be a song about it.
I was hoping I was leading us there.
Yes. So here's the way it worked. About 8 years ago, I had a leader who changed my life. And then the leader, short story, said, "Hey, Rick, you're great at 3 things." I said, "Really? That's it?" He said, "Yes, 3 things. You're a great speaker. You're a great trainer. You're a great musician. Do those 3 things." And so when I brought that musical lens to the work that I do, suddenly connections were made that I didn't never see before. And I literally started bringing my guitar to work. And for whatever reason, it just worked for me. But that's not what you want to hear. You want to hear this in story format, in the form of a song. So about, 4 years ago, I was doing a keynote in Columbia, South Carolina. And it was for an ATD, Association for Talent Development Conference. And I was there 2 years in a row. So they brought me back. And after my presentation, a person came up to me and said, "Hey, thanks for coming back. You were great. And, I was curious about, how do you become a keynote speaker?" And I said, everyone's journey is a little bit different. But, I told this person sort of how I landed here. And we had some laughs about it. And they said, "Man, that's awesome. You should work that into your show." And I said, "Oh, okay, sure." He says, "No, seriously, write a song about it." I said, "Okay." They said, "The song will be How to Be Like Me. You could just title the song How to Be Like Me." And so I did. I wrote a song. Ladies and gentlemen, this is the step-by-step process for how to arrive in a gig as a keynote speaking leadership consultant. By the way, this is a total joke. I do not take myself this seriously, but here is the true story. You ready for this? Here we go.
Yeah.
Live on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, around the world. This is called How to Be Like Me. And you can feel free to sing along wherever you are in the world. Here we go. Ooh, and I am out of tune, but we got to fix that first. Close enough. Here we go. Graduate from college with a useless degree. Moved to California to set myself free. Grow my hair long and join a crappy band. And that's how you be like me. Moved to Colorado for a girl who is a clown. So she wasn't always a clown. I shouldn't go on.
Is he going to be watching this?
People change, y'all. Anyway, so moved to Colorado with a girl who is a clown. Break up because you're afraid to settle down. Move on back to Texas for a teaching degree. And that's how you be like me. Move back to Colorado for a woman that you met. Struggle for the bills because you don't have a job yet. Marry then divorce. See how easy this can be? That's how you be like me. Okay, here's where it gets complicated. Pay close attention. Quit teaching, move to banking. Quit banking, back to teaching. Quit teaching, back to banking. Get a job teaching banking. See how that works? Stay a corporate trainer because you love what you do. Work for a tech co, try something new. No more suits and ties on my body, you will see. And that's how you be like me. Find the love of your life, marriage, kids, let's celebrate. She thinks the song is stupid, but I think it's really great. Become a singing speaker who teaches how to lead, and that's how you be like me. That's right, that's how you be like me. One more time, that's how you be like me. How to be like me. That is the...
That was fantastic. That was amazing.
That is the true story, the step-by-step process. And you can do it too. No. Again, David, I don't take myself that seriously, but that's how I showed up. And really, it was one of those things where, to the point of leadership, I had somebody see something in me that I didn't see. Mm-hmm. And when I started leaning on that musical perspective, everything changed. And at first, I didn't know how the heck this was going to work. I mean, come on, we've all seen a lot of people show up and sing hokey songs, and it's fine. But I wasn't sure what that looked like for me. And this person just encouraged me to keep going. And what I realized, one of the reasons it worked, music is something that can connect us all. Music, there's a band I love, and they have a song in which they say, music is the language of us all. And we connect to different ways when we experience music together.
Right.
And so it's really awesome because I sing songs for people, but I also get them on stage with me, and we make music together. And I think that's one of the reasons that this works. And for me, it's this infinite wellspring. This perspective as a musician just gives me a lot of ideas. And that's how the book came about. Acoustic Leadership was my version of leadership, but basically looking at it through the perspective of music. So, by the way, I saw a question about acoustic leadership. Should we talk about that now, David?
Yeah, and I think for sure. I'm looking for the question. Somebody asked, what is acoustic leadership? Because this is Rick's baby, acoustic leadership. And I think we just saw a sneak peek of that. But when you answer that, I'm going to load this on for you because there's like this theme that's sort of working through the chat, the multiple chats here. And one of the things that I saw was somebody had said that the best trait of their boss, the greatest trait of their greatest boss, was that they were real, that they were authentic, right? It was right here, Marisa. Best boss trait, true leadership, not the fake generic manager. And we also have Juanita, who said that her favorite boss trait is somebody who like sees that people are different and have different traits and bring different strengths. And I think that you, not only is this part of your formula, I believe, but it is what you're living by just pulling out your guitar right then. Most of us have these abilities outside of this sphere, and we think it's inappropriate or too scary or nobody will connect with it if we bring it in. We don't even think about bringing it in. So while Rick talks about this topic, because I think it is dead on, I want you all who are watching this to put in the chat, what is your greatest strength? And maybe it is something that you bring to the workplace every day. And maybe it's a hobby that, like a magical secret hobby that nobody knows about. I want to know what those are. Put them in there and see if like it makes sense potentially to bring that into your career.
And by the way, thank you all for participating in this. I believe it was Marisa. Thank you for bringing that comment up. And you touched on something that's going to change the direction of where I go with the conversation today, because I think it's relevant to what you were asking about. So we'll talk about that as well. Let's start with this. About 4 years ago, so before I started my own company, I was working in a technology sector, and I was all about leadership development, emerging leadership programs, senior leadership programs, those sorts of things. And I realized that there was a disconnect. We were asking so much of our leaders and we were expecting so many great things for them. And I realized in a certain way, we're making it complicated. And then I was looking around the world and I started having these ideas and realizations because everywhere I looked, there was information saying that, and David, you know this in the work that you do, people are burned out. People are leaving their jobs and engagement is not where it needs to be. And I thought there's something missing here. And yes, whenever you read all the information, whenever you talk to your HR people, they were saying things like, yeah, there's a disconnect oftentimes associated with leaders. So I said, but wait a minute. There's a gazillion books on leadership out there. There's all of these ideas. And by the way, we live in a world of infinite information accessibility. I can click on a webpage and know everything about leadership, but the problem is information without emotion means nothing. We have access to all the information in the world, but if we don't have an emotional reason to want to change, or if we can't see ourselves in that picture, it's never going to be, the information means nothing. Right. So I thought, I've got something to share. I've got a unique perspective. And so acoustic leadership, this is a fun story. I was thinking about this question. How do we help leaders do their best work? How do we make it as simple as possible for leaders to do their work? And lo and behold, I found my answer in music. I was watching reruns of, do you remember MTV Unplugged? Back when MTV actually played music? So I was watching MTV Unplugged, and I started binge watching it, just like, okay, I love these things. By the way, I did it at work, so don't tell. But I was looking at these things, and I remember what Stevie Ray Vaughan and 10,000 Maniacs and Eric Clapton and all of these brilliant musicians, and I thought, why is this working? And this word resonate kept coming into my brain. It resonates. It means something. It feels good. And I realized there were three principles that made that show successful: simplicity, authenticity, and opportunity.
Love it.
Simplicity. It was stripped down. It was acoustic instruments. Authenticity. They couldn't hide behind big light, media productions and amplifiers and effects. It was raw. It was the real deal. And by the way, sometimes people screwed up in real time. Eric Clapton, in one of his recordings, did that. And then finally, it was an opportunity to look at the world different, to let their audience hear something different, and for the musicians themselves to do two things: not only try something different, but also expose other people that maybe needed the opportunity. Let me give you a specific example. Nirvana. Do you remember the Nirvana Unplugged? It was really, really popular at the time. And what was amazing about the Nirvana show was they didn't play most of their own songs. So everyone else on MTV Unplugged, they use it like an acoustic or greatest hits show. Nirvana didn't do that. They only played like 3 or 4 of their own well-known tunes, but they highlighted other people.
Wow.
They gave other people's music an opportunity to be heard. So I thought about those three things: simplicity, authenticity, opportunity. What if we, as leaders and developers of leaders, simplicity? Whatever we do, let's make it simple for people to do the best work. Let's get rid of the obstacles and focus on that. Make it simple. Authenticity. Marissa, you brought up earlier, the whole idea is people want real relationships. People want leaders that they trust, that are human beings, that demonstrate a certain amount of vulnerability. And then finally, opportunity. I believe that we have two opportunities. As leaders, the best gift we can give someone else is an opportunity. And then finally, we have an opportunity to change the language around leadership and develop leaders of all types, with or without a title, a formal leadership managerial position.
Yeah.
And those are the three principles behind the book. That's acoustic leadership.
I love that. And you introduced my prop. You're not the only one that shows up with props, by the way. No guitar, I promise. But you mentioned the thousands and thousands of books already published on leadership. And so I grabbed one from my bookshelf beforehand because you talk about simplifying this process and why are we overcomplicating it, and that a very feature of leadership is simplifying things. So I grabbed just a textbook that I have. This is like an actual textbook on leadership, right?
Yeah.
Here's the contents: trait approach, skills approach, behavioral approach, situational approach, path goal theory, leader member exchange, transformational leadership, authentic leadership, servant leadership, adaptive leadership, and so on and so forth. Yeah. What is it? Why are we complicating these things? It can't just be to sell books, or could it?
I don't know the answer to that, but that is the frustration I felt because I was doing it too. I was still am, in leadership development, and I realized we were doing just that. We were saying, hey, you got to know this and this and this and this and this. And then we created these complicated competency models. And check this out. Here's an example. There was a government website. I won't name which one it is. I was looking for inspiration, and they did what a lot of development programs do. They say, okay, here's all of those things that we need from leaders: business acumen, communication skills, drive for results, etc. And then they narrow, or rather break those down into specific behaviors, like initiates big picture perspective rather than focusing on granular details, whatever. And then we rate these people on a scale of 1 to 5 on their proficiency against that. And then we map it by leadership level. Here's what that looks like. At senior leadership, here's what there were, when I counted and did the math, in that one example, 122 different shades of leadership competencies that we expect leaders to be great at. And the fact of the matter is, it's not going to work. Right. That's unrealistic. Nobody's going to be great at all of those things. And then when I looked around, I realized there was information that suggested less is more. focusing on fewer competencies and those personal strengths. You brought up the strengths question a minute ago, and I'm curious to see what that looks like in chat. What I realized was even those leaders who were rating really high in all of those buckets, they were really only using a couple of core strengths. So instead of asking everyone to be perfect at everything, screw that. Let's say, hey, how do we take the areas where you're already excellent and use those to lead effectively, to manage change, and so on? Those are my 2 cents. I'm gonna drop a book.
It is fascinating what you're speaking about. It seems like the natural trajectory of things, because when we look at leadership theory, it starts with the great man theory, appropriately named because it has to start with a great man. And then suddenly we have women leading, and we have people who are not great white men and generals of armies and things that are leading. And so the diversity piece, which we do a lot on diversity at the water cooler, or what do you call this? The bourbon cooler?
Whiskey Jar Wednesday.
Right, so we do a lot on diversity. We had Lindell Von Schill come on and talk about diversity and inclusion and equity. We have Di Cirolo. Sorry, I probably butchered her name. She's coming on in a couple weeks to talk about her unique viewpoint on this. But this is so appropriate. This thing that we're talking about. And when we tell people, here's the formula, and for whatever reason it doesn't mesh, maybe culturally with them, maybe for a lot of different reasons. I think that there's definitely something there. I mean, is this not what you're talking about? Sort of diversity?
Yes, and you asked earlier, break the rules or follow the rules. I think knowing the rules so that we can adapt, is incredibly important. And what we haven't done a lot of, at least not effectively, is change our mindset around all of those things. Who are we defining as a leader? What image do we have in our brain when we think of leadership? And then, what do we expect from them?
Right.
And to your point, there was this stereotype, there was this traditional, and it still exists, there was this typical mindset. Look at how many CEOs in the world are named John, for example. That alone should tell you something. But the idea is we've had all of these other people leading this whole time. We just weren't recognizing them as the leaders they were, or not creating equitable opportunities.
Right.
The other idea here is we have this idea that leaders are, whether they're male or female or whatever, they're strong and courageous. And we hold them up to these standards where, they're these infallible human beings. And we all know that's not the reality of it.
Right.
That's not the reality of it. Some of the most effective leaders in the world say, you know what? I don't know. But it's my job to help us figure this out together. And you've heard people like Brene Brown talk about vulnerability, and I think all of those conversations are hugely important. But I think the way we need to change the way we talk about leadership, and I think we also need to change the idea that there's only one effective means, and people got to be all in on that one area. Let me explain what I mean by that. For example, I'm thinking of a leader. She was not emerging leader. She was a mid-level leader, very well regarded in the organization that I was working with at the time. And she came up to me and we were having this chat about leadership. And she says, the thing about it is every now and then people come up to me asking me for advice on things that I have no idea. I'm not even good at it in my own. I suck at this. What am I supposed to say? I don't feel authentic in, giving advice around things where I'm no good either. And I thought about it and I said, first, congratulations. So somebody thinks highly of you enough to solicit your input and that you've already made an impact on this. I said, second, we as leaders, we don't need to know everything. Nobody knows. We're all trying to figure this out in one way, shape, or form. Sometimes the best thing that we could do as leaders is listen and then ask questions. We don't need to have the answers for everything. You can be uncertain and still be influential. We can be courageous in certain regards and still hesitant or scared. And one of the concepts I stumbled on in the book was going, our language and our mindset, we've got to get beyond the binary. You're either this or you're this. You're either courageous or you're fearful. You're either, no, we can be all of those things. Let's move beyond this idea that we expect only one thing from people and change the way we talk about it too.
Yeah. And that is the essence of authenticity. I often tell leaders that your direct reports know that you're fallible. What they want to know is whether you know that you're fallible, right? That's what we're going to judge, how self-aware you seem to be. So you asked about the answers regarding people's traits and or their greatest skills, and a lot of people stayed in the box. We want to see some outside the box too, although we got one drawing unicorns. That's pretty outside the box, depending on the profession of the individual, I would say. But Michelle says that she is great at admin. And that is a really important niche thing that a lot of times we sort of move through that. We think, admin is sort of where you get to, and then you're supposed to move on, like we were talking about before. Yeah. The fact that she's great at that is amazing. I always surround myself with people that are good at administrative things because it is not in my wheelhouse. I don't do executive functioning, so like I make sure to surround myself with people like that. And then we have right here. I think my talent is that I'm great with being proactive and putting systems in place, but sometimes I can take it too far, which affects time management. Sure. And maybe you want to speak to that about having those complementary skills and surrounding yourself. Like, what do you do? So now you're being authentic. You've got your strengths, but you also, by definition, would be aware of your weaknesses, like that manager that you were talking about. What do you do about those?
That's a great question. And here's the traditional approach to this. We would say, okay, and I forgot your name, but you're great at admin work. You're great at those details. All right, cool. Let's help you build all of those other skills that you're not great at. Let's focus our energy there. That's what the traditional mindset would say. If you look at, for example, Clifton Strengths Finders, the whole Gallup Strengths sort of thing, the idea is do more of those things where you're already great. You're going to get exponentially better by focusing on those areas of natural excellence versus getting just a little bit better trying to fix stuff you're horrible at, right? That's thing one. I think the next thing is to the authenticity question, as individuals, as leaders saying, hey, here's where I'm great. Here's where I need help. I need help in these areas. And I think the most effective leaders, they know that. They say, hey, I am really effective in these areas. And that might look completely different than your areas of excellence, but I communicate to you, here's what I value in you. Here's what we need from you. And maybe here's some other complementary traits we need to fill our team with.
Yeah.
I think the biggest challenge is we have this tendency to want to fix people rather than focus them. And I think across the board, let's stop trying to fix people. Let's start trying to focus them on those areas that are great, and then have real, authentic conversations about where we need help. We're going to get better results in that manner.
Yeah. And that takes investing in the team, and it takes knowing where to put the pieces. And I think sometimes it's easier to just plug and play. In the short term, you think I just need somebody who can do all of it, instead of having to do the hard work that it is to put together this puzzle. Where every team looks different.
And it's funny how it plays together. So the three buckets in my book are simplicity, authenticity, and opportunity. And what we need to remember is that authenticity is simpler. It's easier rather than trying to pretend that we're something we're not. It's easier. It's simpler to say, hey, David's got this one set of skills. I've got this other set of skills. Let's talk about these things and use them rather than, okay, well, everyone expects me to be a leader who's courageous. I've got to always be courageous. And yes, you're leading people, so you need to be mindful of what you do and say. But at the same time, it's simpler to say, here's where we really are. Here's where we all need help. Let's cooperate. Let's talk about it. And in doing so, we not only are authentic people who feel better about showing up every day, we're building more trusting relationships because people know who's showing up every single day. They don't have to second guess.
Yeah. And so in the past, we had Robin Knox on who spoke about imposter syndrome. And sort of at the base core level of imposter syndrome, there exists the sort of like how we view ourselves and what we think is our ideal self or our ought self, right? And this disconnect. But when you embrace authenticity and understand that, it's a game changer. My son just started at a new school, and if he asks, I didn't talk about this, but he just started at a new school, and there's this challenge of making friends and trying to fit in. The first day, we're like, put on a belt, and he's put on a belt, and he shows up. He came home so angry at us. He said, "I was told we don't wear belts here," and I said, "Well, there's two ways to play this: either stop wearing belts and fit in, or just get a collection of really cool belts and become the belt guy, right?"
Yeah.
And I said, in high school, everybody goes that one direction where it's like, how do I sort of fit in? But if you look at everyone with some sort of success in life, like the stars in life, the people who are really doing it, none of them are normal. They're all weirdos.
I love that.
And so when we talk about leadership, it all fits, right? Being authentic.
And I love that idea. You mentioned, hey, either don't wear a belt or own it. Yeah. Be the belt, dude. And I was thinking about that. I think so often, one of the challenges that we have in our lives, a lot of us as individuals, when it comes to imposter syndrome, is we don't own it. We don't own our existence. And sometimes just like going, hey, this is who I am, and owning that is great. Here's a musical example. I'm not going to play guitar just yet, but remember this. All right. One of the most influential dance moves of all time. Are you ready for this? I'm going to do it horribly because I'm at home.
I'm putting you in widescreen for this. Come on. There we go. I remember. Jump on it, right?
So Gangnam Style was ridiculous. It was riding the pony. And what's his name? Gosh, do you remember the singer's name? Psy.
Psy, yeah. I was going to say.
I was having a conversation with somebody at one point, and I was like, "Why is this cheesy?" By
the way, Kara's telling me to shut up and play guitar.
And it was two things. It was one, Psy totally owned it. He's like, "Hey man, this is the Gangnam Style," and it was fun. And when people are like, "Hey, I can have fun, and I don't need to worry about feeling like an idiot because everyone else is doing it," man, sometimes we just got to own it. We have to own it. By the way, I experience all of these things just like everybody else. There's moments where I ask, how am I qualified to write a leadership book? Or, this imposter syndrome does affect people in a lot of different ways. But what helped me, and I think what helps others, is, look, I've got this thing. I've got this perspective, and this is my perspective. And I'm not going to be all things to every people, but I can be this. I can be the guy who, on one hand, is serious about talking about leadership, and on the other hand, dances around like a fool and plays guitar. I can do that.
Right. And we know who you are to Kara, because she's telling you to shut up and play the guitar. This is she's a much better guitar than dancing, at least. I think he's a pretty decent speaker too, but dancer, yeah, maybe she's right.
All right, so so that was a segue, and Kara, thank you for pointing that out. All right, I'm going to segue. Can I play another song, David?
Do it.
Okay. But I got to tell you the story behind the song first. Okay, we several years ago, we were hiring a senior leadership position on our team. And we had all of these applicants come in, and these applicants, this one applicant just stood out on paper. Resume was beyond awesome. Everything that we needed looked perfect, sounded perfect. And we brought this individual into a meeting scenario. Person said all the right things, did all the right things. I mean, just absolutely, again, on paper, qualified beyond belief. And we all sat down in a meeting, my teammates and I, later on, and every single one of us, one by one, voted this person down. And I asked my friend Jeremy, I said, Jeremy, why? This person seems so great. Why did we shoot him down? And he says, because every single word out of this person's mouth sounded like it came from the corporate BS generator. Have you ever seen this? All right. The corporate BS generator, if you go to the corporate BS generator, you basically click a button, and what it does is it uses all of these, corporate jargon stuff and combines them into sentences like completely cloudify an expanded array of best practices, right?
Wait. This is a real thing. This isn't just symbolism. This is a real thing.
No. So this thing corporate, and some of you are going to do it right now. Just give me 5 minutes, do it later. But if you go in there, you just get this, they call it a bullshit buzz phrase, right? It just takes adverbs, verbs, and adjectives, a whole lot of corporate lingo, and it creates these crazy sentences with it. And it was funny because my friend Jeremy said that, and I realized that was exactly it. I could swear, and I'm looking at it right now, I could swear this guy said at some point that he dynamically cultivated bleeding edge collaboration and idea sharing. And it's like, what the hell does that mean, right? Okay, so true story. So I was thinking about that, and what I realized was the gap to our previous conversation, it was all around authenticity. It didn't sound real. The words out of this person's mouth sounded made up, they sounded inflated, and we just want someone to keep it real. How can we trust a leader who doesn't just keep it real? But I was having fun. All right, I'm gonna bring my other guitar out because I think that one was out of tune, the previous one.
It's just got a whole collection right there.
So this is a true story. I started playing with the corporate BS generator, and I started just looking at all of these crazy little phrases that it came up with, and I used it to sort of write a song. So the song, or rather, there's one of the phrases was enables seamless client-based energy. And I said, that's funny. Enables seamless client-based energy. And then I thought of the word synergy because it rhymed. And I wound up writing a song. It's a parody song called the Synergy Song using the corporate BS generator. Excuse me. And it goes to the tune of Yesterday by the Beatles. And it's completely, at first anyway, completely created by the corporate BS generator. Here we go. A parody. Let's start with the familiar tune so you know what we're doing here. Yesterday, all my troubles seem so far away. Now it looks as though they're here to stay. I believe in yesterday. So I took that melody and created synergy. Enable seamless client-based energy. Deploy holistic new technology. Aggregates opportunity. Next word, this one I love. Bifurcate. Deep dive, optimize, and iterate. Circle back, architect, and innovate. Scale up globally, ideate. Drill down. ROI, ROE, and strategy. End to end efficiencies, paradigms, and synergy. Synergy. Paradigms and synergy. The Synergy Song.
Yes, that was amazing. That was amazing. I love it. It really had me thinking. So we get a decent amount of IO psychology practitioners and IO psychologists on here, and often there's this struggle because you learn everything in academia and it's all a science and it's the research, and to be able to take that and translate it and make it meaningful. Oftentimes we get stuck, not necessarily because we don't know how to translate it, but because we want to look smart. And like you've been saying with this authenticity thing or anti-authenticity, we want to seem like we have all the answers.
And what's really fun about that is when I do that every now and then in a keynote presentation, of course, I invite the audience to sing it with me. And I put up the lyrics on a PowerPoint, and every time people just love it and they start singing along. And it's inviting people to, hey, let's have fun together. We can have serious discussions about leadership and burnout and workforce culture. We can do all that, and we can laugh at ourselves and sing a few songs at the same time.
Right. Yeah. Bravo. I love it. Love it.
Thank you.
So, okay. I do have another question I wanted to get to before we wrap things up.
Right.
And that is, So you and I met with, shout out to Speaker Flow. Speaker Flow, amazing organization. If you are a speaker, you're looking to scale up your business or just fine tune stuff, even like amazing, right? So it's a great community of speakers.
Yeah.
2020 happened like right when this thing was getting off the ground, and we're all members of Speaker Flow and panicking because what do you do as a speaker who's used to getting on stages and giving keynotes or getting into packed rooms and doing trainings, and now suddenly we have Zoom that we have to figure out? You were on the cutting edge of all of it. You figured out the studio and you figured out the software and the fancy camera angles and things like this. I was telling Rick, I finally invested in like a decent camera and learned that these are designed for prettier people because you can see all of my imperfections. But Rick was on the cutting edge of all of this. And that's why it brings up the question, because we all were faced with this, and leaders are faced with this all the time, not just in 2020.
Yeah.
You seem so comfortable with change. Is that a true assessment? And if so, why are you so comfortable? And how can others become more comfortable? And if not, why do you look so comfortable? And how can others get there?
I am just as uncomfortable with change as anyone else. I will not purport to be anything other than what I am. And I struggle too. And to your point, I did struggle just like everyone else in the speaking industry when all of this happened. I realized a couple of things over the last couple of years. The world's been really interesting. And David, I think you and I both know, whether we're on stage or whether you're doing Water Cooler Wednesday or today Whiskey Jar Wednesday, people are looking for us and to us. And every now and then I thought, well, hey, here I am, Rick, this leadership dude who's talking about motivation, and I'm not feeling it. How do I authentically show up when I'm not feeling it today? The world is rough. This COVID thing's happening. What the hell is going on? And I realized at a certain point, look, and going back to this own it thing, there's only so many things I can control in this world. What I can control is my decision on how I'm going to use it. And to your point, I think one of the things that helped me was I doubled down hard on a couple things. I doubled down hard on my learning because, hey, the world was shut down. Things were going differently. I needed to spend some time, using this to help myself grow. And I doubled down on community. And David, to your point, that Speaker Flow group, those people, that community, those people saved my butt through the pandemic.
Yeah.
And at that point, it was easy to navigate. It was easy to feel good for the most part because we leaned on each other.
Yeah.
And here are these professional people. And David, I thought this was amazing. And maybe you experienced this too. We have people of all different levels in these groups. Some of them are Hall of Fame leadership speakers, $1 million speakers club. And we're sitting here on a Zoom call together and they're like, I have no clue what the hell is going on. And it was funny because those authentic relationships those authentic conversations built into authentic relationships.
Yes. Yeah. That's something that always impressed me, how vulnerable people allowed themselves to be.
Yeah.
And vulnerability is definitely a key piece in authenticity. And to see that and that trust that's built because of that. And like you said before we got on this, we were talking about like business, how's business, whatever, and you were talking about how it's almost comforting to see, like, to share the struggles with other people, like to see, oh, okay, everybody's sort of like struggling in this area or that area, and there's something comforting with that. Sometimes it's not about necessarily having the right answer. Sometimes it's about like toxic positivity. I don't always need to be told everything's great. I need you to be real. Yeah.
Totally hear you. And I appreciate that you do that as well, David. So thank you for being an authentic, real person, and showing up. Thank you for being a part of that community who really did help me navigate through all of this craziness over the last couple of years.
Yeah, likewise. And if these liver spots on my face now zoomed in don't show you how authentic I am, I don't know what I got to do. So
I told you earlier, I noticed via Zoom the other day that I had a white eyebrow hair. First one I've ever had. I'm at that age now. Yeah. But yeah, everyone else saw it on Zoom. I was like, oh, well,
Yeah, well, we should have probably been talking logistics for this, for this live stream. We were comparing the most awkward places where we found silver hairs on our bodies. Well, on our faces. On our faces. We kept it to the face. But, yeah, so it's not water cooler, it's whiskey Wednesday. So, but that leaves us here. First of all, and I'm going to give you an opportunity to give us your final thoughts. And if you have any homework for us, we love that. And I never, ever, ever remember to warn my guests that I'm going to ask them to give homework. So this is going to be talk about authenticity. You're going to be on the spot. But I'm giving you a second to think about it. Now, everybody who's watching, lift up your smartphone, open the camera app, and hover it over Rick's head. And you will be able to link to him with all of his stuff. That takes you right to his website. And from there, you can explore all of the things he does. And I didn't know he was bringing props of his own. So I brought a virtual prop right from his website. There's his book. And so you gotta check that out. And if above me, the QR code, if you want to see more of my authentic liver spots, that's right there. And so definitely keep in touch with us. We want to continue the conversation. Also continue the conversation in the chat. If you're watching the replay, we want to hear from you, even if you weren't here live. So we will definitely continue to monitor those replays. So thank you all for being here. We are off for 2 weeks, but the following week, we're coming back with somebody who I mentioned earlier, Diana or Di Cirolo. Please, God, I hope I got that last name right. She is amazing, just fabulous. Talks about diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging. This woman's story, she grew up in foster care, graduated foster care. She's a white Hispanic queer mom of 2 and the head of inclusion at JAM. Works in tech on tech teams that are doing stuff that I don't even understand, like blockchain, and she is that one's going to be again #no filter. I love those conversations where you have no idea, you might get kicked off of Facebook. I don't know where it's going to go, but it's going to be interesting. So okay, we're getting back to you here, Rick.
Yes.
Give us your final thoughts, and if you've got some homework, how do we simplify our leadership? How do we make that happen?
Thank you for asking that question. First of all, thank you, and thank everyone for tuning in today. You know, I've got some thoughts and some ideas. I'd love to hear yours as well. You can go to ricklozano.com and reach out to me, and I'm available via email. I'm a human being just like you. One of the simplest areas that we could start, it's just a simple question, is where are we spending our time? Where are we spending our time? What work are we spending our time doing? And one of the things in the simplicity chapter of the book is we talk about the fact that there's all of these things, all of these rituals that maybe we've inherited or we've created, these things we do at work that aren't always worth our time. And from a leadership perspective, it's helpful to say, okay, my role is to help people do their best work. What can I eliminate? What can I delegate? What can I negotiate? What can I automate? What can we stop doing? What things are taking up the time that might be better used, that time we could use to develop people in their areas of excellence? So what can we stop doing? So if there's one thing for homework, what's something that's not serving you well? What are some areas that if you made minor tweaks, you could actually get the return on investment you want? And David, my platform, it's called, my company's Unlock and Amplify, and it's all about helping leaders and teams unlock their potential. And that's one way we do it, by getting rid of those things that we've either inherited or created, and being willing to say, you know what, this isn't working, let's move on. I heard, by the way, a great speaker, Angela Duckworth, I saw her a couple of weeks ago. She talks about grit, and I believe it. Grit's important. You need grit. But the challenge is a whole lot of grit while you're doing the wrong things. That doesn't serve you well. Right. So make sure that you're spending your time on those areas of your natural excellence, those things that are actually helping other people's, and then, go all in there. Show grit in those areas.
Yes, that's another great plug for Clifton Strengths. That's good homework too. If you haven't done that, it's one of the rare ones that you can go on and take on your own without having to go through somebody, and it's definitely an interesting tool that you mentioned before. And I love it. They have one for kids too. I even did it for one of my kids. So pretty cool. So where can we find you? Are you going to be somewhere anytime soon that people will have access to?
Right now, most of my work is virtual. I am speaking at a conference here in San Antonio. The Association for Talent Development is having their annual conference in a week, which reminds me I've got to build my session, so I'll get on that. But I'm available all over the place. RickLozano.com is where you can find me. Yeah, it's been a pleasure.
Great. And if you're in Maryland and work within the HR arena, you can catch me at Maryland Sherm next month. I also have all these things that they're coming due now, right? Like we need your slides. I'm like, oh, that means I need to know what I'm going to say. I'm kidding. I know exactly what I'm going to say in case people with power are watching. And then I'm going to be in Indianapolis. It's actually my first time there, speaking to non-public school educators. So that's going to be really really fascinating too. Because when you talk about burnout right now, that's pretty intense to be in education. Not to be in Indiana necessarily, but to be in education. I want to clarify that.
Indy's great though. Indy's a fantastic place to visit. So check it out. Spend some time there.
I'm gonna have to get some notes from you. Where the hot spots are. So thank you, Rick. Thank you so much. The book, we can get it right from your website.
Yep.
And I know
leadership.com if you wanted, or just look for it on Amazon.
Cool. And we can find your music on Spotify.
Yep.
Are those like songs you did there, or do you get all serious and emo?
Real. Yes, that's it. My goth songs are all on Spotify. So
I want to know what your real music persona is. I'm going to be checking it out. I see you as more of like a boy band kind of guy. No, I'm kidding. Okay.
Folk rock, for the record. Folk rock, Americana, that kind of stuff.
Nice. That's my kind of music. I love it. Awesome. Cool. Well, thank you all for tuning in today. Thank you, Rick. This has been amazing. Which I'm so glad when I overpromise and then the guest comes on and literally over delivers on that overpromise. You knocked it out of the park. Thank you. And thank you all. Please leave your notes, questions, etc. right in the chat, and we'll continue to monitor those. Everyone have a great week, and we'll see you in a couple weeks with Di Cirolo. Yes. Thank you.